Have you ever argued with someone in your head and won? Have you ever said exactly what you wanted to say at the right time without stumbling, without that "I should have said this" feeling afterward? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. And if you've never stopped to think about it, it's because your mind does it so naturally that you don't even notice it anymore. Some people put on music, and without meaning to, they're not really listening anymore. They're living. They're becoming the main character of something. Some people stare at one fixed point and disappear for a few seconds, living an entire scene no one else has seen. Most people call it zoning out and move on with life, but this is not just imagination. It may be your mind trying to give you something real life still hasn't given you. Some people do this in the shower. The warm water is falling, and suddenly it's not a shower anymore. It's a stage, a conversation that never happened, being acted out word by word, with gestures, with pauses, with that tone of voice that never comes out quite so perfectly in real life. Some people do it in bed before falling asleep, staring at the ceiling in the dark, and the mind has already started another movie. Sometimes it's an argument. Sometimes it's a reunion. Sometimes it's simply a moment where they are finally seen, admired, chosen. It's hard to explain, but the scene simply starts playing in the mind. Sometimes they don't even realize it has begun. One minute they're washing dishes, thinking about anything at all. In the next, they're already in the middle of an entire scene with dialogue, with emotion, with an ending. And honestly, for a moment it feels more real than it should. Some people experience this while listening to music. They press play, and within seconds, they're no longer just listening.
They are the person in the song. They're on stage. They're saying what the lyrics say. They're living the goodbye, the victory, the declaration. The body is still there, sitting on the bus or walking down the street, but the mind has already gone somewhere else. From the outside, it just looks like someone staring out the bus window. Some people create scenes where they finally protect someone they love, where they show up at exactly the right moment, face whoever is threatening that person, and fix everything with a kind of courage they may have never felt in real life. Some people replay an old situation, except this time they change the ending. They change what they said. They change how they reacted. They change who won. And then someone calls their name, and it takes a second to come back. They blink, look around, and pretend they were nowhere else. This happens in meetings, in the middle of a boring conversation, while standing in line at the bank, in traffic. The person is physically there, answering, "Yes, of course, I understand." But part of them is already somewhere else, living another version of themselves, a stronger version, a more confident version, a more respected version. And the strange thing is that no one talks about it, as if it were shameful to admit that part of life happens in a place no one else can see. Most people call it having your head in the clouds. They think it's lack of attention, distraction, immaturity. Some think it's a sign that the person can't live in the present, that they prefer fantasy because they're afraid of reality, or that they simply have a habit of exaggerating everything inside their head. Some people look at someone lost in that fixed stare and think, this person is always disconnected. Some confuse it with lack of focus, mental laziness, something that needs to be fixed. But maybe that's not exactly what it is. Maybe this mind that creates entire scenes, with dialogue, with emotion, with a perfect ending, is not running away from anything. Maybe it is trying to resolve something real life left unfinished. An answer that didn't come out at the right time. A courage that didn't appear when it was needed. A recognition that never came. It is not distraction. It is the mind working hard, in silence, trying to deal with something that was left incomplete. Some people process everything on the inside before they process it on the outside. Before living something in real life, the mind has already rehearsed it dozens of times. It has already tested the words. It has already felt the emotion. It has already lived the outcome. It is almost as if the mind were a safe place to practice what the real world still hasn't allowed to happen. Inside, no one interrupts. No one laughs at the wrong moment. No one makes the person feel small. Inside, they know exactly what to do. No hesitation, no awkward pause, no missed chance. And maybe that is why these scenes feel so vivid, so detailed. They are not just random thoughts. They are attempts to feel something that has not yet been felt, to say something that has not yet been said, to live an ending that has not yet happened. When someone imagines protecting a person they love, maybe that speaks to a desire to be strong enough to stop something bad from happening to someone who matters. When they imagine being admired, maybe that speaks to a part of them that feels they have never been seen the way they deserve to be seen. When they rewrite an old argument, maybe they are trying, in some ways, to fix something that remained unresolved inside. The mind does not create these scenes for no reason. It is trying to complete something.
For some people, this starts very early. They grew up in environments where they had no space to speak, where they had to swallow what they felt, where disagreeing caused problems, and the mind, with no other way out, learned to argue inside, where it was safe, where they could finally say everything they would hold back on the outside. Others develop this because of a deep fear of judgment. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing, of seeming weak, of not knowing how to defend themselves in the moment. So they rehearse. They act out every word before they need to use it, as if preparing were the only way to feel safe. Some people experience this because of too much inner thinking. The mind never truly switches off. It is always processing, always analyzing, always replaying. And when there is nothing external to occupy that space, it creates. It creates scenes, creates conversations, creates entire versions of moments that never happened. And some people experience this because of social exhaustion. After an entire day of trying to fit in, trying to say the right thing, not trying to bother anyone, the mind finally relaxes in a moment alone. And in that moment, it creates the opposite of everything the person lived through. A scene where they are heard, where they are respected, where they do not have to monitor themselves. For other people, this comes from an old feeling of not being chosen. Maybe they were never the center of anything. Maybe they were always the second option, the person no one looked for first. In men, the mind creates scenes where, finally, someone chooses them, someone admires them, someone realizes how much they are worth. And then there are those who create these scenes as a way to repair the past, reliving that argument with their parents, changing what they said.
Reliving that moment of humiliation, but this time answering back properly. They repeat it, change it, adjust it, make it end the way it should have ended. A conversation that never happened, a moment that never came, a version of themselves that felt stronger. Maybe that is all it is, the mind, in its own way, trying to give the person what real life still has not given them. Now, pay close attention here with me. Behind every scene created inside, there is an enormous desire to be understood, to not have to explain everything all over again, to simply be understood without having to fight for it. There's a silent exhaustion in living while trying to seem normal, in holding back reactions so as not to bother anyone, in choosing words carefully so they will not be misunderstood, and then, alone, finally releasing all of it inside their own mind, where no one will judge the way they speak, feel, or react. There is also a fear few people admit, the fear of seeming strange, the fear that someone might discover that part of their day was spent living scenes that never happened. That is why no one talks about it. That is why the person blinks, looks around, and acts as if nothing happened when someone calls their name and pulls them back into reality. And there's this hard-to-explain feeling, the feeling of being out of rhythm with everyone else, as if everyone else is living only on the surface, while part of them is always processing something deeper, more intense, something no one else can see. Sometimes the imaginary scene hurts more than it should, because in that moment the person truly feels it. They feel the emotion of the argument they won. They feel the pride of having protected someone. They feel the relief of finally being chosen. And when they return to reality, where none of it happened, there's a small emptiness, almost unnoticeable, but still there. Maybe that is why some people keep these scenes to themselves, because they know that to many people it would seem exaggerated. But for those who live this way, it is not exaggeration. It is the only way they have found to feel something real life still has not delivered. And there is something heavy in that. The desire to finally live on the outside what has already been lived so many times on the inside. Maybe this was never about running away from reality. Maybe it was always about rehearsing the courage that has not appeared yet, feeling the recognition that has not come yet, or fixing, even if only inside, something that remained broken on the outside. Creating these scenes may not be a flaw. It may be the way the mind found to process what the body has not yet had the chance to live, a way to practice, to feel, to prepare for a moment that might still happen. But there is a fine line here, because when these scenes become the only place where the person feels strong, seen, chosen, real life can start to feel too small compared to them, insufficient, dull. And then what was once a space to process emotion becomes a place to hide from it. Maybe the invitation is not to stop creating these scenes. Maybe it is to ask, what is this scene trying to tell me that I need to truly live, say, or resolve? Did what I told you here today make any sense to you? Have you ever caught yourself creating scenes in your head? I want to read the experiences you've had in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Everyday Psychology so you can always be the first to receive new content that helps you understand so much about your own behavior.